theater director, so we've already made a couple of suggestions, of course, Jason, like I said, being from working at Manship prior to working at TSG, had also brought in, as soon as he walked in, he's like, what's wrong with the floor? It's a glossy black. We need a matte black, or what do you say, flat black?
Yeah.
Really what it needs to be is this. And I'm like, so I'm gonna let Jason actually handle this. The one thing that I will say about the system in here is that it was completely, when it was originally designed, it was designed with a projector and screen. That was value engineered out of the budget. So currently, it's just the sound system. Now there are some devices in the equipment rack that you will see, the video processor like that is in the gymnasium. We have one of those in there. All we need is a projector and a screen, and this system would be 100% running. And that's just because some things had to be cut, and
Absolutely.
that's what it was.
Nice thing is, you're almost there. So
Absolutely.
finding a few dollars here and there can get you to where you want to be in this room. The infrastructure's already in place. So in here we have a portable rack, assortment of microphones, a few locations we can plug our devices in, and of course the main equipment rack back in the storage room. All of this can be stored safely in that room.
In which room you're talking about?
This little supply room here,
Okay.
A162,
Okay.
is a lot of space, and that's where the equipment rack is. It's like some of your lighting barrels and things like that are in there as well. So if I had to guess, I'd assume that that's where they intended you to store all the valuable type goods that might walk off, like the mixing console. So here we have a portable rack. We have a custom-made snake cable that's going to plug between your rack and your different locations. So we have a wall location over here. We also have a floor pocket that it can plug into right in the middle of the space. And there's also another location, I believe, in that corner there behind the curtains on stage right. So we can roll this cart wherever it needs to be. There are just 5 connectors have to be tied in on either side. It's all self-contained. You have 25 feet of slack, so you could actually take this upstairs and run the snake cable down the wall if you wanted your front of house mixing person to be completely out of the way, so you can maximize floor space. You do have that ability by just running this umbilical down the wall. You will want to tie this off at the top to one of those rails though, so you don't have the entire weight on the connectors themselves, so you can short them out. But a small amount of string or zip tie or something to one of those will keep the strain off of that snake. So each of these conductors is labeled. You have video, network, and power, and channel 1 and 2. These are just going to plug into their corresponding positions on the plates. So you have one here at the bottom of the rack. We'll just plug our 2 XLR cables into here. Then we'll have a network cable that plugs into the network jack, a power cable that plugs into the system power jack, and a video cable that's going to plug into the video out jack. As Patrick said earlier, the video out is not functioning currently because you don't have a projector at the other end of it. So if you don't plug it in at the moment, it's not going to make a real difference, but the other ones are all important. So let's make sure those are all plugged in on both sides.
On both sides, got it.
Once you have that plugged in, you can also, at this stage of the game or later, you can go ahead and tie in your wired microphones. They're just going to plug, of course, right into the back of the microphone.
Right.
And then we're going to plug into our open channels on the back of this console. If you do this before powering everything up, then you don't have to worry about the question of is the channel muted, because you don't want to plug a microphone into a hot channel that is not muted, because it'll send a pop through your speakers. So we can easily avoid that by just plugging our mics in before we even power the system up. And then there's no, well, look at that channel, see if it's muted. We know everything's muted. So we'll just go ahead and plug in. We have positions 5 all the way through 16 available. 1 through 4 are already taken up by our wireless microphones. So they are permanently patched in this portable rack. And then anything beyond your 2 handhelds and 2 body pack microphones that you have that are wireless, you'll want to go ahead and use your wired mics for.
All right, so we have the capability of right now doing 4.
Yes, 2 handheld stick mics
Right.
and 2 body packs with the over-the-ear.
But if we
element.
wanted to do more than that, more wireless.
You'd have to have more wireless stations that you could tie in here, which you could.
Okay.
A lot of performances will
Right.
rent from somebody like PSS or another live event house, or if they have a stock that they
And we
can
could
pull
just
from.
patch in the extra wireless.
Yes, into these additional channels here.
Okay, gotcha.
If you have additional Audio Technica wireless units, there is a wireless antenna combiner down in the bottom portion of the rack. So you could actually tie the receiver's antenna ports into that combiner. So everything would use these same 2 antennas, all of the microphones.
Okay.
It would have to be other Audio Technica mics, since that is what you have in this system here.
Okay.
But then you would be able to avoid having to have extra sets of antennas set up.
And that's Audio Technica. Microphones
Yes, for the wireless.
for the wireless.
For wired, it doesn't matter.
Audio. How do you spell that? Audio Technica. Audio. Got it. Got it. So you would recommend if we're going to purchase wireless mics in the future to go with this, and it would be a lot easier
Exactly.
to make that transition.
And if you get the same series as what we have here, they actually have the ability to hook up into network and have your computer tie into it, so you can scan the airwaves and have it select the best frequencies on which to transmit. So right now, we've already done that yesterday, where these are set on channels that are ideal for this RF environment with the 4 microphones in play. If you brought an additional 6 microphones in, well, you could then plug all of them into a little network switch, just a little portable switch like you have at your house, a router. Plug in your additional mic units, do the intelligent scan, and have it channel out all of the receivers as a group. So that way you know that this frequency is not going to step on the frequency of the 6th unit that you add.
Okay.
That is very, very simple to do, and if you do decide to purchase more microphones in the future, you can consult us for what models, or you can just purchase them straight through us. If you purchase them through us, then we can actually come and train you on that feature on your computer and show you how to set up for a live event where you're adding additional wireless microphones to ensure that you're not going to have dropouts or anything like that.
What are the acoustics in here? Are microphones necessary? I mean, in a black box, I mean, it's not, what I've learned is not typical, you know, because the space under the acoustics maybe, you may not need mics.
Yes,
It's not a
a
mainstay.
lot of performances, you'll, especially with students learning theater, you're probably going to want to do a combination of performances where they're mic'd and where they're not mic'd, because you want to teach the kids how to project in a performance space.
In a straight
but
play
at
out.
the same time, there are other performance spaces in universities that are all mic'd. And so giving them the experience on both
Right, if
on
it's a
mic
straight,
and mic.
if it's a straight play, then I'm typically go with that it's not going to be mic. But if it's a musical, they're singing and you have music, then
Yeah.
I'm with the philosophy that they need to be mic. But I was just wondering if you knew anything about this space in general, as to whether or not.
This space here, you should be able to do performances without mic.
Singing. All right, so, okay.
Singing, as long as there's not background music. You know, once you start pumping stuff through
Then
those
you need-
speakers,
you need
you're going to need your mics to
That's
get
what
up
I'm
to that, or you're going to have someone riding the controls the entire time.
Okay.
Which, you know, you're really on to a human at that point.
Okay.
They get distracted and all of a sudden you can't.
So is this just like the system in the gymnasium where you can only use 2 mics at a time?
No, this one you can use
All four at the
all
same
four
time.
at a time. So you have 4 receivers. The only limitation is that you have 2 sticks and 2 buttons.
And you can use all 4 at the same time.
All 4 at the same time.
One or the other.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask that question. Good to know. 4 built-in receivers. If we wanted to get this up there, how would you guys go about doing that?
I'm assuming you'll have an elevator somewhere.
There's an elevator,
Bring it from the other side. From the other building, A building.
and the A building comes to this?
Yeah. Understand? Walk on the walk.
There's
It's got an elevator over there.
You roll it across to the gym, take it up the elevator, and then across the catwalk. Now it gets you up into this area here.
Okay, is that something you guys can do, or can y'all bring it up there, or is that something?
Yeah, we can roll it up there after.
Okay.
Is that where your office is up there?
No, it's just that's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna want the sound being operated from
As long as you've got somewhere that you could lock it up there, that's the main thing.
Good point.
You want to have a room that you can put it in that you can lock it. Now,
Good point.
if you can put it, if you've got a closet up here that you're going to use,
Right.
then bingo.
That's a really good point.
Or if this area is restricted access already.
No, it's got to be. If no one's in here, it's got to be locked up. I was just wondering, once again, if we need to get it up there, then it's going to be,
Well, this
you know,
has
it's
nice.
going to be a process to kind of reel it.
Yeah, but it's nice heavy-duty casters on there, so it should, you know,
I
be
know, I'm just
across
trying to-
the pavement without any real issues. You know,
But also, when you have it, I mean, this is what you see here is the final product. I mean, you've got a case that's going to go. I mean, when this is a black box, so
it has a lid and sides and everything.
can bring it.
And handles.
Okay.
So you just.
you'll set this box on top of it, lock it, so you're not just seeing that there.
Okay.
That's the
Well,
finished product of us already taking it, getting it set up.
Okay.
Where, most of the time it's going to be locked down and.
Absolutely. Thank you for saying that.
So at the end, we'll go ahead and we'll do the tear down process and unplug everything and put the case together so you can see how it assembles and disassembles.
Okay.
And then we can wheel it wherever you'd like.
Absolutely.
So once we have everything plugged in, we've picked out our location, we've got our snake tied in at both sides, we have power plugged in. There's just a single power cord that's in the back of this bottom section. So it's just going to pull out and plug straight into one of your standard 20 amp wall sockets. That's going to provide power to all the devices in this rack. And when we power up this rack here, it's actually going to power up the devices in the back. That's why we have that little system power cable there. It allows this rack to control the rack in the back. So we just have a single switch at the very top of this that we're going to go ahead and hit the sequence up, and we'll start turning things on in the proper order. So at this point, we'll see that all of our devices are lit up. Our board will be lit up, at which point we're ready to start making some adjustments and pushing some sound through the system. One thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about plugging mics in is, say you wanted to plug an iPod or something like that in a laptop for some multimedia sources. Right now, as he was saying, the video system is almost non-existent, but we're still going to use it for one thing, in that we have some inputs on the front here for computers. Well, we have headphone, those headphone-like inputs, the 1/8 inch in, that we can plug the iPod cable into, or the headphone out of a laptop into.
Right.
So they'll plug into either of these.
Right.
Well, you have input buttons here that correspond to our inputs here. So VGA1 is this top input, VGA2 is the second one, and then our 2 HDMIs, which aren't going to help us too much right at the moment.
Right.
But our 2 VGAs will actually allow us to plug 2 analog audio sources into it. So an iPod and a laptop. Say the iPod has the beginning just walk-in type soundtrack, a playlist of something that fits the mood of your performance.
Absolutely.
But then the laptop has actually all of your sounds for your production, or your sound effects and loops and things like that. Well, you'd have iPod plugged into 1, laptop plugged into 2, so before the performance, we have the first input selected. Then when we go into the performance, we can select the second input, and it will actually roll over to the other.
Perfect.
And it switches between those two analog inputs.
Perfect.
To control the level on that, we actually have this knob up here, the Stereo 2 knob up at the top right. And that is going to control our analog multimedia inputs.
Jason, I did mention that when sometime late July, early August, I did mention to him that we would come back and do more power user training for him as well.
As well as the lights. That's what we're going to go over. The
Well,
lights.
lights aren't us. That's main stage.
Yeah.
That's
Different
you?
company.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I apologize. Yeah.
It's okay. Hey, look, there's a lot here to take in.
Okay.
I could show you how to use that stuff. They get paid for that, and they might be upset that I was stepping on their toes.
No.
All right. So back to sound. This is a standard analog mixing console. No frills or anything like that. Just very straightforward, basic. It always works. Unlike a digital console, it's software based. This is all hardware based. If it powers up, it works. It's just the way it goes. So they can be a little bit intimidating when you first glance at them, but what you have to understand about a mixer is that it is the same thing repeated over and over and over again. So what we want to do is we want to ignore everything but one strip. One strip at a time. This is all that we have to learn. So we have a logical process where our signal comes in at the back here, and our controls actually trickle down. So the first thing we do, which for the wireless is already all set up, is we set our gain structure. I've made little tiny silver dots for the wireless, which if you look real close, you can see right above the 30. That way if somebody turns the knob, you know where to set it back, because we know those wireless mics are always going to sound the same. So we set the input gain
Yeah, I see
up
the
at the
dots
very
here.
top.
I see the dots here. Okay.
Then we have some EQ capability here, which right now it has a good sound, but if you have someone who just has a really deep or really high voice, you can actually make some adjustments. So you have high frequency, high mid frequency, low mid frequency, and then low frequency, where you can do some fine tuning of their voices. The blue knobs are going to be the actual level of those frequencies, and these green knobs here are for your high mid and low mid. It actually determines what is the center frequency that you're affecting. So you can really fine tune how you're adjusting that person's voice by determining that, you know, I want around 250 to be what I'm adjusting with this knob, because the part of that person's voice that I want to accentuate might be around the 250 hertz range, and that'll vary depending on what you're trying to do. Now, what you probably want to do after you're done with a performance run is go ahead and reset your EQs back to their normalized position, which is 12 o'clock on those blue knobs. That way, when the next group comes in to use it, they're not wondering, why does this person sound so empty or hollow? Because the EQing's all messed up and it's not right for them. So once we get from this EQ section here, we move down to our actual levels. So we have what our input is coming in, how strong that is. Then we're going to fine tune that with adjusting the acoustics. And then we're going to determine how much of that signal goes out different places. Well, right now, since this is a very basic space, we're going to basically ignore these knobs here. What they are is our aux mixes for things like stage monitors and whatnot. There are aux outputs on the back of the console, so if you had a powered stage wedge that you wanted to use to put some sound somewhere else, you could run it out of one of those auxes. And then if it's plugged into aux 1, then we can send level out to that aux using these aux knobs. That's what they're for. Since we don't have any stage monitors in this small space because they're not needed in a small black box,
Right.
then we really don't need these.
Okay.
The master slider down here, on the other hand, is what's going to determine what we're sending out of the board to the rest of the system. So when we set up our gain structure, the most important thing to do is initially set it at unity, which is 0. This slider is going to either attenuate a signal, make it smaller and less powerful, or it's going to boost that signal. You have a lot more attenuation than you do boost, and that's for a reason. We don't like boost. Boost adds noise and artifacts into the sound. So that is a last resort, would you move it above the 0. So when we're setting up the levels initially, we want to set them up for unity gain. So we set up all of our sliders at 0. Say for instance, we're going to set up our wired mic here, the Shure mic, for the first time.